What's good YouTube, NeoNexudus here, bringing you another card talk video. Today we are talking about Ring of Destruction. Ring of Destruction is another old card that has now been errated for the April 2015 ban list. It has been re-released and errated in Premium Gold 2, or if you're in America, Return of the Bling. Its new errata now reads, during your opponent's turn, target one face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is less than or equal to their life points. Destroy that face-up monster, and if you do, take damage equal to its original attack, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. You can only activate one Ring of Destruction per turn. Now if we compare this card with its older text before it was errated, it reads, target one face-up monster on the field, destroy that target, and if you do, inflict damage to both players equal to that target's attack. Now, as you can see, this is a serious rewording of the card, which drastically affects how we can now play the card in the modern game. Now, let's examine this card a little bit closer. You can only activate it during your opponent's turn. It has to be an opponent's monster. The monster has to be face up, and the monster must have equal to or less than the opponent's current life points. So let's examine these first points. The fact that you can now only activate it during the opponent's turn means you can no longer flip over Ring of Destruction in your own turn for game. You can also only target one of your opponent's monsters, which means you can't destroy one of your monsters for game either. Also, the monster must have equal to or less than the opponent's current life points, meaning no longer can we put on board big monsters with stupidly high attack, bumped up to the max, flip over Ring of Destruction for game, because not only that, it will also only burn both you first and then your opponent for the original attack points of that monster. What this means is attack modifier cards now no longer have any effect on the play of Ring Destruction, unless it states on the card double or change or modify the monster's original attack points by a certain amount. No attack modifying cards will affect the damage inflicted by Ring of Destruction. Now let's examine the part of the card text in which Ring of Destruction says destroy that monster, and if you do, take damage equal to its original attack, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. This now means that you have to take the damage first for your opponent to take any damage whatsoever. Now, if by a card effect, for instance, let's refer back to Crush Card Virus, in which it says your opponent takes no damage until the end of the next turn, you then will not inflict any damage to your opponent because you yourself have not taken any damage. You have to receive the damage before you can burn your opponent equal to the damage you took. This little bit of new text resolves a very old problem that has existed since the card's release. Back in the day, when this card was in its prime, too many games would result in a draw due to both players taking the same damage at the exact same time, and that could result in both players' life points hitting zero at the exact same time, resulting in a draw. Now, before I go into some practicalities of this card in the current format and my personal thoughts on the card being limited and ready for use as of April 1st, I'm going to mention a couple of rulings I found on Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki. Ring of Destruction cannot be activated during the damage step. It does not affect the attack points or the defense points of the monster when an attack is declared, therefore it cannot be activated in the damage step. Targeting a monster on the field, on your opponent's side of the field, is a cost of the activation of the card. Another ruling of Ring of Destruction is that the monster targeted must remain face up on the field for Ring of Destruction to resolve. When Ring of Destruction is activated and you declare your target monster, if something like Book of Moon or Book of Eclipse is chained, flipping the monster into face down defense position, then Ring of Destruction's effect will fizzle. It won't resolve because the monster is no longer face up on the field, and the card text specifically designates target one face up monster. So with the monster no longer being face up on the field, Ring of Destruction no longer has a target, and the effect cannot resolve. Another really interesting ruling about this card or fact, if you will, is the fact that because it targets, there are multiple things in the game that can either change its target. Another really interesting monster to talk about targeting is Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree, the level 10 synchro monster with 3100 attack. It states this face-up card in the field cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects except during your main phase 2. So there are multiple cards in the game that prevent targeting, have restrictions on targeting, can change targeting, and all things like that, so that Ring of Destruction isn't quite as broken anymore. If Ring of Destruction didn't target and they changed or got rid of the monster on the field, and if Ring of Destruction didn't target, you could then immediately change to have it affect a different monster on the field other than the original designated monster. Another way that you can prevent Ring of Destruction from resolving is to chain Forbidden Lance onto the monster that is targeted via Ring of Destruction, because at the end of the day, Ring of Destruction is still just a trap card. And since Ring of Destruction is only just a trap card that designates a target, you chaining that Forbidden Lance to that target will protect your monster from all spells and traps as designated on the card for a mere cost of 800 attack points. Ring of Destruction has the potential to be a really niche, cool card, because there are certain cards in the format that have multiple effects, and the Ring of Destruction can interrupt the flow of effects. The given examples I've got is Elemental Hero the Shining and Fire and Ice Hand. Now, if you play Ring of Destruction on one of these monsters, their effect to add or destroy will try and trigger, but considering the last thing to happen on Ring of Destruction is to burn your opponent for damage, those cards will actually miss timing, because Ring of Destruction still has to resolve before Elemental Hero the Shining or Fire and Ice Hand can resolve. And considering these cards activate their secondary effects upon destruction, they can't attempt to activate their effects because they miss timing, because when you burn your opponent for damage, concluding Ring of Destruction, the destruction point of the turn, or the effect, has already happened and passed. We've gone past the destruction into burning for damage. So whereas you would destroy Elemental Hero the Shining, it would attempt to activate adding 2 banished heroes from the banished zone to your hand, Ring of Destruction will instead burn the opponent for damage. Thus, the last thing that happened was burning for damage, not the destruction. Same thing with Fire and Ice Hand. When they are destroyed, they target either a monster or a spell or trap card on the field and attempt to destroy it. Now, by burning your opponent for damage, you interrupt that flow, and the last thing to happen is burning for damage and not destruction. Therefore, the targeting of the monster or the spell or trap cannot activate. Now we come to the biggest part of the video. Do I think, and do you guys think, that Ring of Destruction is going to be a staple trap for the format? Personally, I think it is highly likely. The card has some definite merit. It can miss timings on certain cards. It can get rid of annoying monsters on the field, and it can get you out of annoying situations, e.g. the Djinn Lock. The Djinn Lock is where they banish Djinn, Releaser of Rituals, from the graveyard as part of the ritual summon for one of their Necros monsters, and it does not allow you to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Essentially. You cannot special summon monsters. Now, by using Ring of Destruction, during the opponent's turn, of course, targeting their Necros monster that was summoned using the Djinn, Releaser of Rituals, you blow out that monster. You take the damage, I don't know, anywhere from 2-3 to 3k. And then the opponent takes the same damage as well. Pretty fair trade-off. Not only do they take damage, but you get rid of that annoying monster that stops you from special summoning as well. Now, I think it's for that sole reason that it's a fair trade-off. It is also a really nice way to get rid of that hashtag limited one vanity's emptiness. If you are having trouble getting around a monster on the field and they have that vanities up, not allowing you to special summon, you flip that Ring of Destruction during their turn, blow up their monster, take a bit of damage, burn them for damage, their monster goes to the graveyard, and then Vanity's Emptiness goes as well. So, all in all, I think that it's a pretty fair and balanced card for what it does. You can activate it during your opponent's turn, the monster has to stay face up, both players take damage, you take the damage first, preventing draws, and the monster has to have equal to or less than the opponent's life points, so it all sort of balances out, and I reckon it's going to be a really good staple of the format. Another thing I want to touch on is that life points may become a lot more valuable, because you don't want to drop yourself within that target of having a monster on board that has the same amount of life points as you do, because if they flip that Ring of Destruction, that could mean game. So whereas most people are saying life points are literally just to pay costs, life points don't really matter that much, I think with Ring of Destruction in the game, it's going to make you think about your moves a lot more, because you're going to be thinking, do they have that Ring of Destruction? If they flip that Ring of Destruction, will I be gaming this turn? And I reckon that's why the card is going to become quite skillful, in the sense that you have to plan, you have to calculate, you have to lie and wait for the perfect opportune moment rather than just flipping it for the sake of it. Now obviously if they're going to MST it during their turn, you flip that shit and you blow up their monster, no questions asked. You don't let that shit go to the graveyard. But what I'm saying is, keep it on the field for as long as you can, so that when they get down to a close enough bracket so you can either put them in cowboy range or Ring of Destruction for game range, you flip it and you win the game. Or you flip it, you take them down to such little life, and then during your turn you overlay for Cowboy and you burn for that 800, and that's game. All in all, I think this card has real potential for the format. I think it's a really good errata. I think Konami could have done a lot worse and could have nerfed the shit out of this card. Essentially kind of what they did with the Crush card, but they didn't, and I reckon this card is going to be quite playable. I would definitely recommend running it. But what I will say is, pick up the Gold Series, the Premium Gold Series version, because it has the latest errata of text and is unfair to use against other players if you are not using the most up-to-date text on your card. Now there are some cards like Elemental Hero Stratos, for example, that only have minor changes. Ring of Destruction has a complete rewording on it, so please, I encourage you to go out and buy the Premium Gold Series version, or to buy Premium Gold and try and pull one yourselves, because it's better to have the errata than to have an old higher rarity version of the card and keep on having to explain why that doesn't work, why you can't do this, why you can't do that, without the text actually being on the card. So that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe and what have you, and this is NeoNexudus signing out. Peace.